Hi guys, in today's video you are going to find our second half of our lesson from yesterday covering fourths and eighths. You're also going to find our shaded fractions, which is going to help you with today's assignment. So go ahead and get your notebooks out, your pencils, and follow along. Okay, so we are going to continue where we left off yesterday, which was fractions, parts of a whole. So yesterday we discussed our wholes and our halves. Today we are going to discuss two new parts of a fraction, and we are going to just turn to the next available page, and we're going to title this one, give me one second. We're going to title this one Fractions Continued. So let's go ahead up here. I'm just going to title it Fractions Continued. And it's still chapter 2. Okay, so we're going to start with our fraction part, fourths. Now listen to that vocabulary word, fourths. What is a word that we hear in that word that kind of sounds familiar? Well, if you are thinking four, then you are correct. So we're going to write out fourths. F-O-U-R-T-H-S. Fourths. Now I'm going to go ahead, and I forgot, we're going to partition this page into halves. Remember, making it equal parts. So going back to fourths. So we said that fourths have 4 equal parts. So that is something to remember when we are partitioning these shapes. So what we're going to do is we are going to just draw 2 different circles, and I'm going to draw one right here and one right here. When I partition these circles, I want to make sure that they have their 4 equal parts. So the first one I'm going to draw one that we kind of see always. So I'm going to partition it into halves going up and down, and then I'm also going to partition it going side to side. So now if I count the circle parts, the fractional parts, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this circle is partitioned into 4 equal parts. Now the next circle, I'm going to draw it. So if you remember when we did halves, we kind of drew the halves in a couple different ways. So I'm going to combine 2 of those ways into this circle. So going diagonal, and then doing it across the other way. So now I have partitioned the circle into 4 equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is how we could partition the circles. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw 3 different squares. So just going to draw them randomly anywhere. 1, 2, and 3. Now for this square, kind of how I did this circle, I'm also going to do it over here. So I'm going to partition this one into 4s by going diagonally. So this one's going to go from corner to corner. So you see I've turned it into halves. Then I'm going to go again, other corner to other corner, and now I've partitioned it into fourths. The next square I'm going to do is one that we kind of see always, and in the lesson earlier, we made it look like a window, but when we're dealing with fractions, we're going to call these fourths. Then lastly, I'm going to do another way that we can partition a square into fourths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go half. I'm going to halve it first. Then I'm going to go half on this side, and then half this side of the square. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts. Now here, what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw 3 rectangles. So I'm going to draw 2 going side to side, and I'm going to do 1 going up and down. So here's my up and down, and I'm going to do another one going side to side. Oops, it's going to be a smaller rectangle. I drew it too close to the square. So my first small rectangle right here, I'm going to partition it into fourths. Once again, I'm going to halve it. Then in between this part, I'm going to make that a half again. And then on this side of the fraction, I'm going to make that a half. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts on a rectangle. What I'm going to do to this one, I'm going to show you a different way. I'm going to show you a different way. And I'm going to kind of turn my notebook to the side. And I'm going to draw my lines. I'm going to have it. Then again on this side. And on this side. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts going side to side. Now for this rectangle, I'm going to do this one just a little bit different. Now it might not be how we're normally used to it, but it's still going to make it into 4 equal parts. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to halve it. So now I have 2 equal parts here, but remember I need to make it a fourth. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this into a half. And then at the top, make that into a half. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the reason why that this is also 4 equal parts is if I were to cut this, they would all be equal in size, meaning that this is still how we can make this object into fourths. Now I'm gonna do one more rectangle, sorry. I'm gonna do a rectangle right here. And this one, we're also going to make it kind of look similar to some windows, but remember they're fractions. So we're partitioning them into fourths. So I'm going to make that a half and make that a half right here. And these are just a few examples of how we would see fourths in fractions. Now our next fraction part is our eighths. Listen to that word, eighths. E-I-G-H-T-H-S. Eighths. What word do you hear in that vocabulary word? Eighths. Well, if you hear the word 8, then you are correct. So when we're dealing with fractions, eighths have 8 equal parts. Okay, so from here, the first shape that I'm going to partition is going to be a circle. Now, to partition the circle into eighths, we're going to have to go through a few different steps in order to make sure that we have our 8 pieces. So what I'm going to do here is my whole. Now, if you notice, every fraction goes through bits and pieces of the other fraction. Now, I also want you to take notes and see what is happening to the pieces as we're partitioning them. As the number of equal parts are getting bigger, what is happening to the size of the part? So here's the whole. It's one big one. Then I'm going to make it a half. Now I have 2 equal parts. What are you noticing about the size? Then I'm going to make it a fourth. And if you notice that the parts are getting smaller, now watch this. I'm going to make it into eighths. So first what I'm going to do, I'm going to go diagonal one way. And then diagonal another way. Now, what did you notice about the parts? The number of equal parts are getting bigger, but each piece is getting smaller. Then, from here, we're just going to do a few more examples. I'm going to do three squares. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to start with this one right here. and I'm going to make these equal parts. I'm going to make them go up and down, which is a way we usually don't see, but when we do, they're really fun to make. So I'm going to make it a half. Then I'm going to make it a fourth. And then what I'm going to do is I want to go in between each part and partition that one more time. So that now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 equal parts in this square. Now this square right here, I'm going to do it a little bit different. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a half, but I'm going to make it a half going side to side. Then I'm going to partition it going up and down. So here it is at a fourth. Then again and again. So now it kind of looks like some teeth, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 equal parts. Then in my square over here, I'm going to do it kind of how we did the circle over here. So I'm going to go diagonally on both sides. Then I'm going to go up and down and side to side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. Now, like I said, pay attention to the sizes of each part. You notice that as I'm making more equal parts, the little pieces are getting smaller. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw 3 rectangles. I'm going to do 2 going up and down. So 1, 2. Then I'm going to do 1 going side to side. Okay. For my 1 going up and down, I'm going to kind of do it this way, but this time I'm going to flip it. So remember, what helps Miss Medina is remembering that I have to go through each fraction. So here's my whole, then my half, then I'm going to turn it into fourths, and then I'm going to look for the middle of each part and draw my line there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 equal parts. Now for this one, I'm going to kind of do it how we did our fourths up here into a different way that we would see it. So from here, I'm going to make it a half. Now remember, I need 4 equal parts on each side to make an eighth. So I'm going to go the half of each one. So now this has 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Now I need 4 more parts on here. So I'm going to half it, look for the middle section, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This has 8 equal parts. Now our last one up here, I'm going to do it kind of how we did down here, but I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to half it right here. And then I'm going to kind of turn it, and I'm going to do my parts right here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these pieces, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beautiful job. And this is how we partition our fractions into equal parts. So the second part of today's lesson, we kind of did a quick mini lesson on how to determine the number of fractions shaded. So we're going to title this one Shaded Fractions. And this is chapter 2. So we're going to turn to the page that is right after all of our beautiful fractions right here. And we're going to title this one, just as we did in the table of contents, Shaded Fractions. And this is chapter 2. So what we're going to do, we are going to partition this into 4 pieces. And we are going to start with a circle. Now, the question for this pieces, we're going to put, how much is represented shaded? So that is our guided question for this little mini lesson. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partition this into eighths. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to shade in 3 parts. 1, 2, and 3. So the question we want to know is how much is represented shaded? So when we answer this question, we have to see how many parts are shaded out of how many equal parts. So the first thing I want to do, I want to count all the parts together, including my shaded parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know that this is partitioned into eighths. Okay. Now I need to count the shaded parts. So I have 1, 2, 3. So how I would answer the question, how much is represented shaded? 3 out of 8. Or we can read it as 3 eighths. Remember, you have to count the total number of parts first and then tell me how many parts out of those total are shaded. So for the next one, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw a square. I'm going to partition it like this. And I'm just going to shade in some right here. So the question is, how much is represented shaded? Well, remember, I have to count my total equal parts first. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are into fourths. Now, how many are shaded? 1. So how do we answer that? 1 out of 4 are shaded, or 1/4. And that is how we represent our shaded fractions. Now let's do, I'm going to do 2 more down here. And these I want you to answer on your own. Then let me see if I do a rectangle. And I want you to answer these for me. How much is shaded? Remember, count your equal parts. Then you're going to tell me blank out of blank is shaded. And that is it, guys. I hope that you guys are having as much fun as I am with fractions. Like I said, this is my favorite unit to teach. So I'll see you tomorrow.